Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, founder of Settele Tutoring, and in this video, we're going to go through my predictions for the December 2024 SAT. Specifically, I'm going to go through some advice for pacing yourself better through the hard module. I will give you a hard reading passage and a hard math problem so we can work on some strategies, and I wrote both of those questions myself. So there's no spoilers here for the practice tests, no spoilers for the question bank. It's just a new question that I hope you like that gives us a good sense of what's going to be on the test. That is a reminder, just be careful guys as you prepare in this last week. I've already seen 2 other prediction videos from other tutors where all they did is use questions from the practice tests to tell you what's going to be on the real test. And that's bad for a couple reasons, but the main one is that if you are trying to save those practice tests for future SATs, then when they get spoiled in these videos, now they're not going to be good predictors of your SAT score. So I do talk about that in some other videos, but just as a reminder, be careful what you watch, be careful what resources you use. My promise to you is that my videos will always make it clear where the questions come from. Just look at the title, look at the description, or just listen to what I say. I will always tell you if it's a spoiling question or if it's one that I wrote myself. So my other thing here is let's be honest about what it means to make a prediction about the SAT. No tutor, myself included, has specific knowledge about which kinds of questions are going to be on the exam for the December test. But generally speaking, the same questions that were on the November and August and May exams are also going to be on the December ones. We're going to see the same topics, the same strategies, the same formulas, the same rules. And if you've been studying for a while, then you can also make predictions about what's going to be on the SAT. The same kinds of questions that you've been studying are going to show up on the test. Of course, there's always some level of unpredictability. That's what makes the hard questions hard, but those things can be managed with the right strategies, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, if you haven't been studying for the December SAT at all, then you've got some work to do in this last week. Go to the homepage of my channel and just scroll down. You will see things organized into very smart playlists to help you learn the main strategies and the main topics that you will see on the exam. But let's get into some advice about pacing through the hard modules. Now, if you're struggling with the first module to finish in time, you probably just have issues with some of the fundamentals. Learn the grammar rules, try to improve your reading comprehension as best you can, try to improve your algebra skills, but honestly, those are long-term projects, not the kind of thing you can probably do in a week. Maybe the Desmos calculator can get you a little faster in the first math module, but if you're struggling there, then you're missing some basic stuff. If we are struggling in the hard module, well then welcome to the club, everybody is. So let's talk about some advice that I have talked about before. Some of it is in more detail in the weaknesses playlist that's in the description here, so take a look at that. But these are things that help me get through that hard module, but even for me, it is very tight and I occasionally run out of time. So one thing I always make sure I do is have a good step 1 strategy. Things like plug points into equations and arithmetize in math, things like dumb summaries in reading, making sure I can predict the rule using the answer choices for the grammar questions. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my channel homepage and watch some of the strategy series lessons. Those are really great ways to get some step 1 strategies. The point is, when I see a question, I'm not wondering what to do. I know what strategies I'm going to use already, and I'm trying to make them fit for that question. Occasionally they fail, but most of the time they succeed. And so it's really important not to spend a long time debating with yourself what to do on a question. We need some step 1 strategies that we can get into right away without much thought. Now, a place where a lot of people struggle is the kind of middle of the road questions. When we get to, let's say, the hard math module, a lot of people are like, well, I need more time to work on those hard math questions. How do I move through those hard ones faster? Well, in many cases, you can't. They're hard and tedious, and they're going to take you 3 or 4 minutes. There's no getting around that with some magic strategy. But it's the stuff that comes before that, those kind of middle difficulty questions where maybe you're spending too much time. You're getting them right, but if you're getting them right too slowly, then that's taking time away from those hard questions where we really need it the most. So we do need to use those step 1 strategies to move through those the fastest. If you take a practice test in this last week, just make sure that you bookmark questions and save those bookmarks somewhere. The ones that take you a long time, or if you debate with yourself how to solve them, anything that makes you pause and struggle, make sure you review that question, even if you get it right, because there might be something to learn about how to move faster through that middle group of questions. Sometimes about memorizing something, sometimes it's about a hard strategy that we're going to be able to use. Now, other times we just need to accept the fact that we sacrifice hard questions sometimes for the greater good. You might be running out of time and only have time for 3 of the remaining 5 questions. That's okay. As I've said in some of my videos about how to get certain scores on the test, if you want to get a 750 on a reading or math section, you can still get about 3 questions wrong. So if you choose to give up entirely on 3 hard passages or 3 hard math questions and then just make sure you spend the time getting everything else right, you can still get a really, really great score. You have to go into the SAT with this mentality. If you are trying for that 800, odds are you won't get there, because as soon as you stumble the slightest bit, you're going to freak out and panic, and you're going to mess up on more questions than if you had just accepted that maybe 1 or 2 per module, per hard module, are okay to just guess randomly on, leave aside, and then do as best you can on everything else. So I have talked about these things in other videos. Again, they're in the description, but let's talk about maybe a new way to think about things that I haven't spoken about as much. And that is to trust the process. There are a lot of questions where it feels like we're going to need to do a lot of work, but if we trust the strategy and we're lazy in just the right way, sometimes it kind of surprises us and we get a question that's otherwise very hard right very, very quickly, or at least with much less work than we might have expected. So that's the kind of thing I want to talk about with these 2 problems that I wrote that are going to help us think about this kind of difficult question, hopefully in a new way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the reading question up for 5 seconds. If you want, you can try it on your own first. Just pause the video. But I think it's actually better to watch me do it and to see how I get through this difficult thing in a much less mentally taxing way using some important strategies. So here we go is our reading question. For those of you who tried this passage, I bet you think it's kind of hard or at least a little time consuming. I'm going to show you how we can do this in a very simple way if we just trust the process. We're still going to use our main reading strategy, which is to work on dumb summaries. Don't try to make things complicated. Specifically, though, we're going to add on 2 ideas I don't talk about much, the idea of a filter and a wedge. So I'll explain those things as we get to them. Let's start by reading the question, which just says basically fill in the blank, and then we can go to the passage. And as I read the passage, I'm going to highlight things that kind of stand out to me. Remember, you can highlight things in the Blue Book app as you take the test. You can also make notes, but I'm probably not going to do that here. I'm just going to kind of highlight, and I'm not going to explain anything. It's just this is what stands out to me. I'll worry about it at the end. So let's take a look. The eastern oyster was once abundant in the waters around New York City, so much so that it was a common item on local restaurant menus through the first half of the 19th century, when oyster populations saw significant decline due to overharvesting and increased pollution. Marine biologist Brandy Shaw and colleagues conducted a long-term research study that measured the eastern oyster population in a segment of the Hudson River near New York City, finding an inverse correlation between oyster numbers and precipitation amounts during the winter months. They speculated that winters with higher snowfall totals saw an increase in the amount of road salt runoff entering the Hudson River, which could have a detrimental impact on the eastern oyster's life cycle. However, big word, after New York City discontinued using road salt in 2017, Shaw and her colleagues did not see a statistically significant change in eastern oyster population patterns suggesting that. Okay, so again, I'm not going to do deep analysis. I'm not going to go back and reread the passage and try to understand all these relationships. I want to have a dumb summary that is very easy to understand. And the filter that I'm going to use is just to kind of go through a first pass with the answer choices. A lot of times what we want is our filter to be a yes or no question that asks a much better question than the one the SAT gave us. So my filter here, is going to be very simple, okay? Does road salt matter? Does road salt matter? Okay, and my dumb summary is a yes or a no, depending on what the passage is saying. Now, where did I come up with that? That, however, stood out to me a lot. It is adding on to the passage in a way that contradicts what was already said. So their speculation was that road salt had an impact on the oyster. However, after they discontinued using road salt, they did not see a significant change, meaning the road salt does not matter. So no is my dumb summary answer to this simple question. The passage is focused on the road salt. I am turning it into a yes or no question with this filter. And now as I go through the answer choices, I'm just focused on that simple idea. Is the choice saying that road salt matters or not? I wanted to say that it does not matter. That's my dumb summary of the passage. So let's go to the choices. Choice A. The fluctuations in eastern oyster populations could be caused by pollutants other than those commonly found in road salt. Does road salt matter? No. How do I know that? Because it's pollutants other than road salt. So this is saying road salt doesn't matter. I'm not going to analyze it any more deeply than that. It matches my dumb summary. Hopefully, this will be the only choice that matches my dumb summary, and I'm just done. I don't even need to worry about all the inverse relationships and all that stuff. I can just move on to the next question. But regardless, I've got a good sense very quickly of whether I should keep this choice or not, and we can worry about the details later. So we're keeping this in. It matches, right? Choice B. The amount of road salt runoff is one of many factors influencing the population of eastern oysters. Does road salt matter? Yes, it is one of many factors influencing the oysters. That's the opposite of what I want. Don't analyze it any more deeply than that. It's saying the opposite of our dumb summary. Kill it off. Look at C. Year-to-year variation in winter precipitation totals does not affect eastern oyster populations regardless of the volume of road salt runoff. So it's a little harder, but does road salt matter? No, because regardless of the amount of road salt, something else is happening, right? So I'm not going to worry about the something else. The fact is, in terms of the road salt, they're just saying that regardless of how much road salt there is, something else is going on. If they're saying regardless, that means it does not matter. So I do have two answer choices that fit my dumb summary. That sucks, but it's not the end of the world. We're going to deal with that, but let's deal with it later. Don't try to analyze choice C in more detail. Don't try to analyze A again. Just move on to D, finish the job that filter started. More time must pass before the study can accurately measure the effect of road salt runoff in the Hudson River. Does road salt matter? Genuinely? I don't know. More time must pass before we can know how road salt affects things. But that's not what we're saying, right? Our dumb summary was saying that no, it doesn't matter. We know that, right? The passage knows that. So the fact that this choice is hemming and hawing about, well, maybe if we just let the study run a little longer, I don't care, right? So sometimes the answer to a yes or no question is just like, not yes or no. That's not a good sign when we wanted a definitive no. So again, I'm not going to analyze this choice much more deeply than that. It just doesn't really answer the question at all. And this is the point of the filter, to keep you focused on just one simple idea that the passage is really pushing and not get distracted by other details or choices that are worded in such a way that they kind of tempt you and make you go read and back again and say, oh, well, maybe this fits. No, it doesn't match. So now we've gotten rid of two choices. That's great. But of course, obviously, we need to get to one. And this is where the other part of our strategy comes in, the idea of a wedge. Many of you, when you get down to two answer choices, go back to the passages. Let me reread. Maybe there's more to it than this. Maybe I missed a detail. It's going to help me understand what these choices are saying. Well, that's a lot of reading, and we don't really know what we're reading for. We're not sure what to get out of the passage. So there's lots of details in there that might just distract us. But right now, the way this is set up is we only have two choices left. Let's focus on them. Let's drive a wedge between the two choices that remain. So we're focused on A and we're focused on C. And I'm just going to draw over B because I don't care about it anymore. So we're going to find things in the answer choices that are different, right? So I could read the whole passage, that's lots of words, or I could read the answer choices, which are just 2 lines each, basically, and those differences are the things that we can go hunting for in the passage. So I don't care about the road salt thing anymore as much because that part I've already dealt with. We know the choices agree on that, so don't focus on it anymore. There must be something else. So let's see, what other things can we ask ourselves? What other yes-no questions might we be able to pull out of these answer choices? Let's look at A. The fluctuations in eastern oyster populations could be caused by pollutants other than those commonly found in road salt. So I'm gonna skip the question step, but basically I'm gonna give you the answer here. This is saying that other pollutants matter. Notice the symmetry, right? How we were talking about whether something mattered before and now it's another thing, but it's still kind of symmetrical. That's pretty cool. Let's look at C. What is this saying? Year-to-year variation in winter precipitation totals does not affect eastern oyster populations. So precipitation does not affect the oysters. This is saying precipitation, long word, does not matter, right? So they're not even about the same topic. But I've still summarized them into ways that are really understandable. And now, again, I can go to the passage and ask very simple yes or no questions. Is the passage saying that other pollutants matter? Is the passage saying that precipitation does not matter, right? If the answer to those questions is any different from my summaries for these choices, that's it. The choice is dead. So now when I go back to the passage, I'm looking for those specific ideas. I'm not worried about details that have nothing to do with that. So at the beginning, they did talk about pollution. I remember that. It's kind of here. So that was back in the 19th century, though. I don't know if that has anything to do with what's happening now. Then they get into this whole craziness here. They found an inverse correlation between oyster numbers and precipitation amounts. That means that when there was more precipitation, there were fewer oysters, right? Inverse correlation means those arrows go in opposite directions. As one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. So they are saying precipitation matters, right? The precipitation affected the oysters. Now, they contradicted themselves later, so let's just make sure. Are they contradicting that? They speculated that winters with higher snowfall totals, more precipitation, saw an increase in the amount of road salt runoff entering the Hudson River, which could have a detrimental impact on the eastern oyster's life cycle. So the snowfall hurt the oysters. Again, that seems like those things matter. However, after they discontinued the road salt, they found they did not see a statistically significant change in eastern oyster population patterns. Now, notice what that's not doing. It's not saying that all the stuff we learned before about the precipitation is wrong. It's just saying what we thought about the road salt is wrong. That's a different thing. So this seems to be saying that this relationship still holds, that the precipitation and the oysters are somehow still related, which contradicts the wedge in choice C. So I would get rid of this. Now, they didn't really talk about other pollutants. That might bother some people, but remember, this is an inference question where we know that they're probably going to add some extra piece of information that logically follows from whatever we talked about in the passage. So it doesn't really bother me that we're bringing in this other pollutants. Plus, they're being pretty flexible with it, right? It could be that other pollutants matter. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. But that certainly is not contradicted by the passage. So I would pick A here pretty confidently. And obviously I took a long time to get through this question, but this would probably be a minute and a half for me if I did this for real. Those yes or no's are really fast. I'm not second guessing them. I'm moving through and getting down to A and C very quickly. Then I'm noticing that wedge between A and C, something that I can really use to drive them apart and make them look more different so that when I go back to the passage, I can find which difference really matters. And sometimes we'll get lucky and the filter will get down to one answer choice right away and we don't even need to do this step with the wedge. So we can just move on to the next question. This saves us from a lot of deep analysis of these passages that we might do beforehand if we're feeling like we need to understand it to solve the question, or that we might do as we're trying to separate the answer choices that sound kind of right. We don't want to have to do deep analysis. That's the entire point of a dumb summary, because deep analysis takes time. We don't want to focus on every detail because not every detail matters. By thinking in terms of filters and wedges, we can find the details that matter most and then really fixate on those. And usually that's going to be enough to get us to the right answer. So hopefully that all made sense. This is definitely something I would have done on the real test. Not with as much scrap paper, but certainly in my head. But let's take a look at a math question where we can have this similar approach of maybe trusting the process and being a little bit lazy in certain ways. And then sometimes, yes, it does work out where we don't need to do a ton of work. So let's put the math question up. Again, there's no spoilers here. This is one I wrote. If you want, pause the video and try it yourself, but then I'll go over it afterwards. Now, a lot of you are going to say this is a very easy question. You understand the algebra, but you're missing the point, right? This is that master the middle idea. This is a question that I think would be hard. The SAT would consider hard, but it's really, really easy if we trust the process and think strategically about how to solve. As soon as I see this question, my first thought is I'm going to arithmetize. I'm going to make up numbers for P and Q and see what happens. So I'm going to be lazy about this. I'm going to pick 1 for both P and Q. Now, normally I'd pick 0, but they did say that these have to be positive constants. Though a lot of you are going to worry here. Well, what if 1 doesn't work? What if they can't be the same thing? What if it's a different number? Who cares? This is kind of like the filter step from the reading question. Just pick something simple, see what happens. Maybe we'll get down to 2 answer choices and then we can deal with that problem. But start simple. Start with the simple idea and hope for the best. I think you'll be surprised how often it works. Now we're picking 1 here and we're just going to recognize that this then becomes the square root of 1 plus 2, which is the square root of 3, times the square root of 1 plus 2 cubed. Now I know that in my head, but like guys, you can use the calculator here. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 to the third is 27. So there's that. So this is the square root of 27. Now again, you can know how radicals work and you can multiply them, or you can just use the calculator. Radical 3 and then times radical 27 is 9, because 3 times 27 is 81 and the square root of 81 is 9. Now again, you can do all that really fast, or the calculator takes care of it really fast for you. So what we really have here is this entire equation at the start is equal to 9 when we put these numbers into P and Q. So what I'm looking for is, since the answer choice is supposed to be an equivalent expression, which one gives us 9 when I put in 1? Well, the best thing about 1 is it doesn't matter what the exponent is. 1 squared is always 1. So I don't care about that. I really just care about the coefficients. So choice A, 1 plus 2, 3, not 9. 1 plus 4, 5, not 9. 1 plus 2 plus 8, that's 10 plus 1 is 11, not 9. 1 plus 4 is 9. Done. Even talking about it, it only took me 2 minutes to do this question. In the real test, this is 30 seconds for me at most, because I have a good step 1 strategy. I know that as much as possible, I want to reduce the amount of algebra I do on the SAT, because algebra is tedious, it takes time, it causes mistakes, plus this has exponents and radicals. I don't want to deal with all that. So I know within literally a split second of seeing this question that I'm going to pick numbers and put them in. Yes, it could fail. Yes, it could have happened that 2 answer choices would have given me 9, which is why when we arithmetize, we have to check every answer choice. But I don't care about that. If it happens, I'll deal with that. I'll drive a wedge between the choices by picking a new number or doing something else and figuring it out. But sometimes, guys, the lazy strategic approach just works. And then suddenly a question that would have taken probably a minute and a half to do this algebraically is over with in half the time or even less. That is how we save enough time on the middle and kind of some of the hard questions to have the time for the really, really hard ones where maybe those kinds of little strategic shortcuts won't work. But oh my gosh, if you are not arithmetizing on this question, you are not thinking about the SAT correct. Trust the process, trust the strategies. Don't just use them when things go wrong the traditional way. Start with a default step 1 strategy that involves using plug points into equations and arithmetize as much as you can, and I think you will be pleasantly surprised how often those strategies work. That is something you need to do for the December SAT. Well, I hope that helped. If you liked the questions I wrote, then please make sure you hit the Join Channel Membership button on any of my videos. I'm also going to put a link in the description. For just $5 a month, and you can cancel this anytime, you're going to have access to over 350 original questions that I've written. Each video has the question itself for a set time limit, and then a detailed explanation using strategies how to solve that question. It's a great way to get extra practice, even if you've used all the College Board resources or are trying to save those practice tests. Now, it's not available in every country, so I do apologize for that. That's under YouTube control, not me. But if you are still looking for great resources, I've got plenty of free ones on my homepage. Make sure you go there, just kind of scroll down. I've got the best thing probably is explanations of every practice test question for the Blue Book practice test. So just go to the channel homepage and check that out. If this helped you, obviously, please like and subscribe, but also please share this with your friends, share your channel with your friends, and that way I can spread the word. I greatly appreciate that support. Once again, I'm Mike Settele, founder of Settele Tutoring, and remember, when it comes to your scores, don't settle for less, Settele for more. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck on the December SAT.